For I have worked with this encyclopedia under his tutelage, under his guidance. I had the opportunity to serve Rotary International on the board when he was the president and under his leadership. Let me tell you, he's one of the rarest of the breeds of being of Rotarians in Rotary International, who is a living encyclopedia, a library. I can vouch for it and I can put it on record. I have yet to find a Rotarian who's more knowledgeable than Mark Daniel Maloney. For me and Sonal, it was absolutely a pleasure to work under his guidance, under his leadership on the board with him and Gay being there. And each one of us, I can vouch for that the board of 1920 swear by him. And the way he led us during just at the start of the pandemic with the decisions which he took needed a lion heart. And let me tell you, he is a lion heart. Not only is a lion heart, but he's a man of astute knowledge. So Mark Daniel Maloney of Rotary Club of Decatur, Alabama, USA. He was the president of Rotary International in 1920 and has had every position available in Rotary. So I don't know if I talk about the virtues of this man, probably this symposium would end. But just let me cover up. He's been the chair of the nominating committee. He's been the chair of the Sydney Convention. He's been the chair of the other things which are there all over the place. And you have got him, Bendre, for the right absolute topic, because the topic which he's going to address each one of us, he is an absolute authority on that. So I would not come in between that. Let me not just, talk about the things which he's been also been the chair of Future Vision Committee, and he's the principal driver of the Future Vision, which Rotary talks about all the time, Rotary International talks about all the time. He's the principal driver for that. And he's a lawyer by profession and serves his company along with his gracious wife, Gay. They both belong to the same company, attorney and the same law firm. And both of them splendid Rotarians. So let me just come between them and you for the knowledge which he's going to share. And Mark, for you, welcome to India. It's always a pleasure. This time, I'm not going to make you run around in India. I'm going to make you comfortable in the seat which you are there, and you can address us from the safety of your home, from the comfort of your seat. I'm not going to make you run around. So Mark, and all the people here in this group are the coveted people who give training to not only governors, nominee, and are responsible for training Rotarians under the RLI program across India. So each one of the persons here either is a graduate of RLI or himself or herself is a trainer of RLI. So they are the people who are creating Rotarians, knowledgeable Rotarians across India. So Mark, all yours, they are all yours, and we are all looking forward and eagerly waiting to hear from you. And thank you so much for agreeing to be here. I know how hard it is to catch you, but I'm glad that George really caught you there, of course, with the help of Rekha. So thank you once again, and our greetings to Gay also. And of course, Mark has some lovely grandchildren, so all the grandchildren, Mark, all our love and blessings to your grandchildren. And just to know everybody, let everybody know that if you want to send a gift to Mark, he's a great lover of popcorn, okay? So he is absolutely, he'll eat tons and tons of popcorn if you want to send it to him. Thank you, Mark. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Kamal, for the welcome address. As has been the practice with the symposiums, we would start the symposium with a Rotary prayer. May I request past President Binoy, the youngest one of the RLI, to recite the Rotary prayer. Binoy, could you just
good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And I thank Rotarian CM for giving me this wonderful opportunity. This is special to me because I was my club president in the year 1920. So as I recite the Rotary prayer, I request everyone to close their eyes, and here we go. God Almighty, as we join together today as Rotarians and as friends, we acknowledge that Wherever we go, we are always in your presence. We pray that our actions may reflect this awareness for whatever our future will bring. If we must face disappointment, help us to learn patience. If we must face sorrow, help us to learn sympathy. If we must face pain, help us to learn strength. If we must face danger, help us to learn courage. If we must face failure, help us to learn endurance. If we achieve success, help us to learn gratitude. If we attain prosperity, help us to learn generosity. If we want praise, help us to learn humility. If we are blessed with joy, help us to learn sharing. If we are blessed with health, help us to learn caring. And as we stand before you today, help us to learn the value of service above self. May your radiant spirit guide us and our loved ones all our days. And let us say amen. Thank you. Over to you, Sim.
Thank you. Thank you, Binoy, for the lovely Rotary prayer. And let's move forward. The best of the introduction can come from the past district governor, Dr. Samir, who was the district governor during Mark's year of presidentship. Yeah, Samir, all yours. Would you
Thank you, CM.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody, especially good morning, PRIP Mark. Absolutely my pleasure to introduce our past Rotary International President, Mark Daniel Maloney. But on behalf of all the Aloha governors, specifically my Rotary International President, Mark Maloney, and you saw what great directors we have. Director Kamal and Dr. Bharat Pandya were our directors. He made half my job easy by doing the introduction. So that's why working as governors under Mark and Kamal and Bharat was so easy. But I have a formal introduction, which I will, just read out to all of you. And in my background, you'll see some visuals from a movie I had made to introduce Mark 3 years ago when we were governors and he was our president. And then a small poem written by Rupa on behalf of the Aloha governors. So just give me a second. And as I introduce Mark Daniel Maloney, a member of the law firm Blackburn, Maloney and Schubert LLC, focusing on taxation, estate planning, and agricultural law. He represents large farming operations in the southeastern and midwestern United States and has chaired the American Bar Association's Committee on Agriculture in the section of taxation. He's a member of the American Bar Association, Alabama State Bar Association, the Alabama Law Institute, and is a past president of the Morgan County Bar Association. He has been active in Decatur's religious committee, chairing his church's financial council and a local Catholic school board. Mark served as Rotary International President during 2019-20, when he presided over the first virtual RI convention that was organized during the COVID-19 pandemic, emphasized strategies to grow Rotary, and increased awareness of Rotary's long-standing relationship with the United Nations. A Rotarian since 1980, he has also served as RI Director, Foundation Trustee and Vice Chair, and aide to 2003-04 RI President Jonathan Majiagbe from Nigeria. He also participated in the Council on Legislation as Chair, Vice Chair, Parliamentarian, and Trainer. He was an advisor to the 2004 Osaka Convention Committee, chaired the 2014 Sydney Convention Committee, and chaired RI's Operation Review Committee for 4 terms. Prior to serving as district governor, Mark led a group study exchange to Nigeria. He also served as Future Vision Committee Vice Chair, Foundation Training Institute Moderator, Foundation Permanent Fund National Advisor, Member and Vice Chair of the Peace Centers Committee, Member of the International Polio Plus Committee, and Advisor to the Foundation's Water, Sanitation and Hygiene in Schools Target Challenge Committee. Mark is currently a trustee of the Rotary Foundation. Mark's wife, Gay, is an attorney in the same law firm and a member and past president of the Rotary Club of Decatur, Daybreak, Alabama, USA. Both support the Rotary Foundation as Paul Harris Fellows, major donors, and Bequest Society members. Gay and Mark have 2 daughters, 1 honorary daughter, and 2 grandsons. Ladies and gentlemen, past Rotary International President, Mark Daniel Maloney. Well, that was the official introduction, President Mark. And here on behalf of the Aloha Governors, Rupa has this special poem for you. Dear past Rotary International President Mark, 3 years ago, on a current leadership journey, together we did embark, connecting the world with love, happiness, and an undeniable spark. At the fag end, destiny had its own designs, pushing us into an unfathomable dark. But under your tutelage, we surged forward, lent a hand to many, and true to your name, left a significant mark. We have been lucky to have you as our leader and as our friend. May this connection last forever with no end. Gay and you have been sparkling stars. We thank you both with all our hearts. On behalf of Aloha Governors, yours forever, Samir and Rupa. Thank you so much and welcome past Rotary International President, Mark Maloney.
Thank you, Dr. Samir. Just a small instructions. Please put in your questions in the chat box. We have a moderator, PDG Rekha Shetty, and we will be moderating the questions. Yes, Mark, all yours for the next 30 minutes. We are eagerly waiting to hear from you.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be with all of you in India today. First off, Chairman CM, thank you for organizing this meeting and for providing me with the information needed to be here and sending the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. Past Director Kamal, as you made your remarks, the first thing that jumped into my mind was the first of the four-way test. Is it the truth? You may have kind of embellished just a little bit, but thank you very much. It makes me feel good on this hot Wednesday morning in Alabama. And past Governor Samir, it is so good. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I enjoyed seeing the video once again with the great scenes, and the poem from Rupa really touched my heart. And Samir, I am sure that you are sending that in the email to me right now so that I can share that with Gay, because she will be very excited to see that. And speaking of Gay, you noticed, maybe if you listened carefully in the introduction, you know, I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Decatur, Alabama, and Gay is a member of the Rotary Club of Decatur Daybreak, Alabama. In fact, she is at her Rotary meeting right now. She and I are not in the same Rotary Club because there is no Rotary Club in the world big enough for both of us. So, and Gay's been a Rotarian since 1996, and I joined Rotary when I was 25 years old back in December 1980. So, the subject for the day is the Council on Legislation 2022. And I appreciate CM's invitation and Retty's invitation to participate in this RLI South Asia session on this topic. Let me just give you a little background about the Council on Legislation. I'm sure that many on this call know that the Council on Legislation is, we call it Rotary's Parliament, and that's a little bit inaccurate. It is a meeting that is run in a parliamentary fashion, but it is not a parliament in the sense that it is available to deal with the issues of the. It is the body in which our constitutional documents can be amended only by action of the Council on Legislation. Of course, this is a good thing because it provides the Rotarians and Rotary clubs of the world, through their district representatives, with the opportunity to make decisions regarding our governing documents. But on the other hand, it is a hindrance to our organization because it meets only once every 3 years. We do not have the ability to make changes easily in intervening times, although we have very recently included a provision that the board can bring urgent legislation to the annual Council on Resolutions. But it is not a continuing body. It does not have a sense of corporate memory. It cannot address as they arise. And therefore, it ties the hands of the board in adjusting to situations and circumstances. Now, you may say tying the hands of the board, that's a good thing to do. And that's fine. But so there are pros and cons. I'm a great lover of the Council on Legislation. As was mentioned in my introduction, I served as vice chair of the council back in 2004 when the council chair was past President Bill Huntley from England. I then served as council chair in 2010, and I was parliamentarian and trainer for the council in 2016. And I've attended every council since 1998, except for the council in 2013. And so I've seen councils come and go. At the 2022 Council on Legislation, the Rotary International Board and staff and the Council Operations Committee were presented with a significant challenge. How do we undertake this meeting when many representatives will not be able to travel to Chicago? Some because of visa issues, some because while they could travel, upon their return home, they would have to quarantine for a week, 2 weeks, and that would be a big disruption to their lives. Some because they could not meet the health requirements, the testing requirements to come to the United States. And others, like myself, who just developed COVID right at the wrong time. I ended up testing positive for COVID on the day that I had to be tested in order to fly from Alabama to Chicago. So I, in turn, actually viewed the council activities virtually. I was not able to be there in person this year. So approximately 1/3 of the representatives participated virtually, and 2/3 of the representatives were present in person at the hotel in Chicago. And I must say that from all aspects, the meeting went very well. And from the logistical aspects, I think the Rotary International staff deserves a tremendous amount of credit in making this happen well. But those representatives who participated virtually need an equal amount of credit. Some of them were participating with 3 different devices at their desks in the middle of the night, because the meetings were happening from approximately 9 o'clock in the morning Chicago time till 5 o'clock in the afternoon Chicago time. So in India, if my timing is correct, that was 10:30 at night until 6:30 in the morning, straight through the night. And you're dealing with your laptop, with an iPad and another device, because the legislation was on Microsoft Teams, the debate was on Zoom, and the voting was on a platform called Lumi. Since I was a non-voting member, I only had to deal with 2 devices, with Microsoft Teams and with Zoom. I didn't have to deal with Lumi. But there were 98 proposed enactments transmitted to the Council on Legislation. Of those 98 enactments, 29 were adopted by the Council. and 3 of those were acted before the council began. Based upon an action taken at the 2019 Council on Legislation, it was permitted that legislation, proposed enactments, could be sent out in advance for consideration. And if they received a positive vote of 80% or higher, they would simply be adopted by the council on the consent list. And so for the first time, we had 3 enactments actually adopted in that way. Conversely, if an enactment had received less than 20% favorable votes, positive votes, it would not proceed to the council for debate. There were no items that received that low of a percentage of votes. So that removed 3 items from the agenda, permitting greater debate for other items that were perhaps of greater interest or more controversial, or for which there were greater questions. So if 29 enactments were adopted, that means 51 proposals were rejected, 13 proposals were withdrawn, and 1 item was postponed indefinitely, which has the effect of at least council reject and it considered at some future council. So, and the tenor of this council was very hospitable. There have been councils in the past where the tenor of the representatives was that they had certain things they wanted to be done, or they wanted to show that the council had authority rather than the board. Here, it was a very cooperative atmosphere. Now, in my opinion, so there were all these 29 items that were adopted by the Council on Legislation. What do those items show about the future of Rotary, or at least the trends in Rotary? And in reviewing the legislation that was adopted, I have determined, in my opinion, this legislation reflected 4 trends. The first, and I'll come back and talk about each of these specifically, but the first one of these trends is an increasing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Second is an increasing emphasis on membership flexibility. Third, a continuing enhancement of the status of Rotaract. And finally, a focus on increasing our ability to adapt by taking a serious look at governance issues. And now I'd like to talk about the legislation that actually, upon which I rely to determine that there are these 4 trends reflected by the council. The first is enactment 22-07. And this was an amendment to the bylaws of Rotary International to emphasize that diversity and equity and inclusion should be celebrated in a well-balanced club membership. And most of these items that I will identify passed by at least a 2/3 margin. Not necessarily that 2/3 were required, because 2/3 vote is required to amend the RI Constitution, whereas only a majority vote is needed to amend the bylaws of RI or the standard Rotary Club Constitution. But I think it shows the level of support for this, that almost all of these passed by 2/3. And I will make a note of the vote. And so we already had a provision that we should celebrate diversity in a well-balanced membership of a club, but we added equity and inclusion, and this passed by 420 votes in favor to 56 against. And so, you know, we've heard a lot. The board started focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion with a statement during the board meeting, I believe in January 2019, during the 2018-19 Rotary year, when Barry Rassin was president and I was president-elect. And we have seen increasing focus on that and increasing emphasis on making our actions diverse and being inclusive with respect to those actions. And I think this is just a reflection of how we are moving forward. And, you know, this became an issue at the time of the virtual convention in 2020. The George Floyd incident in the United States had happened just before that. And I actually made a statement with respect to the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the virtual convention. So the second trend that I see is an increasing emphasis on flexibility in membership. You know, Rotary has a history of having membership rules that are just pages and pages of membership rules. Some of you, not that many, will remember that prior to 2001, we had this complicated 4 types of membership. There were active members, additional active, past service, and something else. Now I can't even remember. And then we had honorary members in addition to that. And why? This is when clubs were exclusive rather than inclusive. And so we've seen this trend move forward. And we've seen in 2016, we had the changes, that flexibility in club bylaws where the attendance requirements are there, but a club can choose not to not to have them apply to their club. And so there were 3 items that were adopted by this year's council that emphasized flexibility in membership. First was Enactment 22-13, which removes the requirement for members to live or work in the locality of the club. And, you know, this is just a reflection of the age where we're having more and more virtual meetings, where we're having clubs that meet only online. You know, my sister, who lived in Turkey for 23 years, she joined a Rotary club after me being a Rotarian for 40 years. She finally joined a Rotary club, and she joined an online club dealing with human trafficking issues that's based out of Minnesota. She was living in Turkey at the time. She has since moved to Quebec in Canada, and she's still active in the club. And so these requirements for being in the locality in this day and age are dated. They just don't reflect the current situation. I mean, how many people can you think of? I mean, here in the United States, we call them snowbirds. They live in the north, but in the winter they come to the south. But they can now Zoom back into their club meetings even though they're away. And so just another way to be more flexible in the membership of the clubs. And that was adopted 402-75, not very controversial. Then we had a provision in 22-14 that any member may propose a prospective member for membership in any club. So that means that if you're acquainted with someone who you think would be a good Rotarian in another city, you can propose that individual for membership in the club in the other city. We had a provision that has been there for a few years that a club propose someone for membership in another club. And the idea was that if you transferred, if you were moving and you had been a member of your club, you could be proposed to another club. But this now lets any Rotarian have that ability. And finally, Enactment 22-15 permits a satellite club to have members associated with multiple clubs. And this was a little more uncertain. What would this mean? It still passed by almost 2/3, but not quite, 308 to 160. But this means that a satellite club affiliated with a club in a community could end up having, as you know, it could have 2 members from another who are actually members of another club in town, but participating in this satellite club. And, you know, you could, in a city with multiple clubs, you could bring together people who are technically affiliated with more than one club in the community. So as I mentioned, the third trend is the continuing enhancement of the status of Rotaract. You know, we've had a 180-degree turn in the last 5 or 6 years in our perception of Rotaract. Rotaract was a program of Rotary International. And after the elevation of Rotaract at the 2019 Council on Legislation, Rotaract is now a different membership type. They are our partners, no longer just program participants. And so in Enactment 22-18, it was clarified and emphasized that Rotaractors may be members of RI committees. Now, my personal opinion was that they could be members of RI committees before, and they had been appointed from time to time. But this just makes it clear that Rotaractors can be members of RI committees. And then in Enactment 22, and that one was adopted 393 to 79. And then in 22-84, Rotaractors, like Rotarians, may attend the meeting of any Rotary club in the world. They do not require an invitation. And that was one of those 3 enactments that was actually approved prior to the council in what we call the vetting process. And then finally, I think the fourth trend is a focus on increasing our ability to adapt, and in this time, particularly on our governance. And there were 2 items that dealt with that. First was Enactment 22-39, which removed the specific terms of reference for standing committees that were in the RI bylaws. And this was adopted by a vote of 376 to 104. Prior to this change, and in the bylaws today through June 30th, until the new bylaws take effect, we have many different committees listed with specific numbers of members, with specific duties for some committees, with specific exemptions for some committees. And now the bylaws simply state that there are these 8 standing committees. And then it's up to the board to determine the length of term, the number of members, the specific duties. And this just gives much more flexibility. it lets the board adjust to the circumstances at the time. And frankly, right now, both the board and the trustees are in an effort to look at the terms of reference of all of the committees, of the RI committees, of the foundation committees, and of joint committees. And the board and the trustees approved the terms of reference for their respective just at the meetings month, and the joint committees will be considered at the October joint meeting of the board and the trustees. And this is being led by a working group of 2 directors and 2 trustees. I am one of the trustees along with Dean Roars from Canada. And then the 2 directors are incoming Vice President Nikki Scott from England and Vicki Pulitz from the United States. And then finally, the other item that is in this area of increasing our ability to adapt is the council's approval of pilot projects dealing with governance issues to be undertaken in Great Britain and Ireland and in the zone 8, which includes Australia, New Zealand, and some of the South Pacific Islands. And these groups will be proposing pilot projects to take a look at alternative governance structures. You know, right now we have so many levels in Rotary, from the president of RI down to the club member. And, you know, we're trying to investigate whether we can flatten that organizational chart and remove application. And hopefully these 2 pilots will give us some indication of that. So those are the trends that I see being reflected by the 2022 Council on Legislation. An increasing focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, an increasing emphasis on flexibility in membership, a continuing enhancement of the status of Rotaract, and increasing our ability to adapt by a serious look at governance issues. So I thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts about the Council on Legislation and kind of put it in, you know, it's not just this was adopted, that was adopted, kind of put it in, people may disagree, may have other trends that they see in the legislation and other emphases, and may consider this not real, not a trend, but that's the way I see it when I review the legislation that was adopted by the council. Thank you very much, CM. I'm happy to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Mark, for the lovely address, and there were very many questions coming up. I would request Dr. George to moderate, since PDG Rekha was unable to join. But the first question I would ask by the time George gets into, there's a question from Rotarian, this is Bhat. Is it not surprising that 50+ votes against provision for that is DEI and inclusion? What were the opposing views in debate?
Well, I must admit that I don't recall what the opposing views were in debate, and there may not have been any opposing views in debate. I can assure you that at any council on legislation, some people are going to vote contrary to what you think would be natural. One thing that, you know, we always have a test vote before we get to the council, but we never ask them all vote yes, because some will vote no anyway, and that would raise questions about whether the voting system is working well. No matter what the question is, some people are going to vote contrary to what you would think anybody would vote. And, it's for me to speculate why more than 50 voted, in my mind, it was still, that's what, a 4-to-1 vote, 420 to 56. That's a 7-to-1, more than a 7-to-1 vote. I consider that a landslide. Maybe they just didn't know which was yes and which was no on the keypad. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. We have past President Dr. Seema Singh. Seema Singh, would you just unmute and ask the question directly, because it's got 3 parts to it. Dr. Seema?
Yes. Actually, I wanted to ask whether this, whatever COL proposals go, can the club president directly forward it to RI? If club president wish to forward any proposal.
All right, an enactment, any club, not a president alone, but a club may propose legislation, an enactment to the Council on Legislation. However, for considered, it must be submitted to the district and endorsed by the district at a district conference or a other meeting for the purpose of voting. And once it has that district endorsement, it can then go on to be considered by the Council on Legislation. And
Mark, I have one question to this. I always hear a PDG visiting for the purpose of COL. Is it necessary that PDG must go there for COL purpose, or anyone else can represent?
Our bylaws require that representatives must have served as district governor, if that's your question. So yes, unless there's no district governor, if there's no past district governor available, then there's a procedure for selecting someone else. But
it's required.
That's what our bylaws require. And good luck on getting that changed, because you've got a group of past district governors voting on whether to open it up to more than past district governors.
Sorry, Mark, there's another thing linked to the same issue. Are all the districts PDGs who are visiting there, they are able to present it in the meeting? All the proposals are heard or presented, or few are selected?
No, all proposals are submitted to Rotary International. They are then reviewed by the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. The Constitution and Bylaws Committee may always does find some proposals to be defective. And there's several reasons: that it doesn't change anything, or it's contrary to it's an amendment to the standard club constitution, which is contrary to the RI bylaws. And the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, I'll just call it C&B Committee for short, then communicates with the proposer to try to get it in a fashion that it's no longer defective. And then as long as if it's not defective or it gets fixed so it's no longer defective, it goes to the council. Now, it requires representative to stand up and present it. The representative can withdraw it, can notify that he or she is not going to present it, or that the district or club no longer wants to propose it. But the representative can also just not appear when it's time to present it. The representative is not there, then it's considered withdrawn. But that I can't recall that ever happening. I think it has happened in the past, but even a representative who doesn't like it himself or herself generally at least presents it on behalf of the district that proposed it. And, you know, it's up to the integrity of that person of how forcefully they argue for it. But
thank you so much, Mark. And I understand that a proper time and space is given to the proposer to work upon it and be there. Now it's up to the district how they represent. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to know all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema.
Let me just clarify. Sorry, CM, that the proposer does not necessarily present it. It's the representative from the proposer's district.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Dr. George.
Mark, good morning to you. Good evening to everybody. There are lots of questions about Rotractors. The Rotractors, one main question is, the Rotract is going to assume greater responsibility in Rotary, and how best we can utilize the services of district Rotract representative and also the Rotract committee members in the district. How can we give them more responsibility in the district?
Well, that very much differs from district to district. You know, the Indian experience with Rotaract is so different from the United States experience with Rotaract. You know, in many districts in India, there are dozens of Rotaract clubs. Perhaps in all districts, there are dozens of Rotaract clubs. And therefore, the DRR is working with those clubs like the governor, the Rotary governor is working with the Rotary clubs. Here in the United States, you know, in my own district, you know, I'm not sure the number of Rotaract clubs we have, but it's less than 10. It may be 5 or 6. But we also happen to have a huge Rotaract club, the Rotaract Club of Birmingham, with 350 members, and it's as sought out to be. I mean, you have to apply for membership to get into this Rotaract club. So the experience is very different. You know, just in general terms, I think you need to include, I think at the district level, if there are Rotaractors like there are in India, well, first off, it's hard for me as an American to say, you in India ought to do this. I mean, but where you have, you know, here in the United States, we don't have that many Rotaractors. We can't have a Rotaractor on every district committee. But in India, I think you have many more Rotaractors. And I think you need to, let me put it this way, you need to consider having a Rotaractor on every district committee. And this is not Mark Maloney telling you what to do. Don't say, oh, he's trying to impose his American standards. Just something to think about. And you've got this pool of young, energetic people that have maybe some different ideas, and they could bring ideas to the district committees that may make Rotary more appealing for Rotaractors to transition, or for even other young professionals that have not had the Rotaract experience to be attracted to Rotary. And so, you know, we did that with the International Assembly in 2019, where we invited 60 Rotaractors to come and participate with the training of the governors-elect for the 2019-2020 year. And you can talk with Samir and the other Aloha governors and get some thoughts from them about whether that was good or bad. But I think it changed the dynamics in the discussion rooms and brought up ideas that would not have happened anyway. And to me, I'm sure there are many, many other ways, but that's perhaps the most prominent one in my mind.
Okay, sir. The second most important question, which comes again in the Rotract section, is the Rotractors will have to pay $8 for a community-based club and $5 for the campus-based clubs. So if this is the case, there are Indian clubs, Rotract clubs, where you have 100, 200. You mentioned 300 as a huge, but there is a Chennai Rotract club which has got 2,000 members. So you can just imagine all these people paying the dues. It's not going to be possible. They're not going to pay. So is there any minimum number of Rotractors which have to pay the dues to say that this Rotract club exists? Minimum number of Rotractors pay the dues and then say, okay, Rotract club of such and such exists.
I'm not aware of that. But I think, you know, payment of dues also, you know, I think rights within the club will probably be tied to the payment of dues. I mean, just like if you're a Rotarian and you don't pay your dues, you're not entitled to vote or hold office. And I think in the case of Rotaract, you know, I understand. I mean, I see the issue you're raising. It's going to require, I don't know to that yet. I'm not aware of the minimum number, but we're feeling our way through this, and we'll just see how it goes.
Because there are many Rotract clubs. Again, on the issue of paying the dues, there are many Rotract clubs here have people paying to the Rotract district. That is the district Rotract representative. He's got a finance committee, and to the finance committee, they pay about 100 rupees or 200 rupees. Stop with that. And there'll be only a few people who would pay to the Rotary International. So can this club with 100 or 200 members be still recognized as a Rotract club with 100 members, or only the dues paying members are considered as Rotractors?
Well, as far as RI is concerned, in my opinion, only the dues paying members will be considered Rotaractors. That's the number that will count, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
I understand. I understand.
At the convention in Houston,
yeah,
President Shaker referred to 1.4 million members. And I was in a breakout session where, how did we get to 1.4 million members? Well, it's because we're talking about Rotarians and Rotaractors. And, you know, going forward at some point, once this dues implementation gets established, the number that's going to be used is going to be the number that pay dues to RI.
Thank you, George. We have DGN Nurul from Bangladesh. Nurul, could you ask your question, please?
Thank you very much. Hi, Mark. This is Nurul Kabir from Bangladesh. Nice to see you. My question was very simple. You see some dilemma always going on, that what should be the minimum number of the member that club can designate a compliance club, because many clubs we see that 7-member club exists and they have the right to vote. So is there any threshold level set in the COL that this number of members should not exist if they do not have their qualification of minimum threshold?
There is no provision in the constitutional the governing documents of which I am aware that requires a minimum number of members for a Rotary club to have voting rights.
But can I ask a supplementary question? You see, when you are talking about that minimum number of members of a club is 20 members will be the qualified for any legislation or any voting and others. But at the same time, RI constitution allows that even minimum 2 to 3. Then some question arises how that club can constitute their board of directors if they do not have a minimum number of members.
Yes, you're right. But I mean, if there is a concern regarding clubs manipulating elections and existing only for the purpose of elections and having a minimum number of members and casting those votes, then, you know, you can, a club or district can propose legislation seeking to disenfranchise the smaller clubs, you know, and the council will vote that up or down. But there is no, you know, there have been provisions in the past, I'm not even sure if it's currently effective or not, that small clubs must pay dues, RI dues, for a minimum number of members.
Yeah.
If you, Mark, if you can remember in 2019 COL, I was fortunately being the observer there. I learned that there was a debate about that, and debate was not actually ended up with a good solutions. So still there is a, as you said, that for manipulation of the different legislation, voting. So there should be a threshold level given by RI. Otherwise, we will be suffering a lot in many.
Well, and see, well, RI, we can't say that. When you say RI, the only way that can change is if on legislation makes it. And, you know, in my district, we have clubs with less than 20 members, but it's not an issue. And I would say, generally speaking, across the United States, it's not an issue. Those sorts of election manipulations are limited to just a few countries. And therefore, when you try to convince the Council on Legislation how important it is to change it, they're viewing it as, well, why should we penalize a similarly situated club in our area when it's not an issue in our area? And that's one of the drawbacks of a global organization.
Exactly.
And you have to deal with it in other ways. You know, make a proposal, see what happens. But those are the sorts of arguments you're going to get. Yes, it's a problem for you, but, you know, why impose a sanction, a penalty, when it's not needed in other situations with clubs of that size?
Thank you.
Thank you, Nurul. We have PDJ Dil Nishan waiting for a long time. Yeah, PDJ Dil Nishan, could you go ahead and ask your question, please?
Thank you, CM. And Assalamu alaikum, our past president, RI president. My question is that, not question, this may be a suggestion, because Rotary actors in our country, they're maximum they're student. And in our country, the students don't have any earning sources. So for them, it is the dues, paying dues. It is very difficult. So I know that we have to write it to our legislation committee, but if any other suggestion from your side, that's the thing.
All right. Well, now the dues for Rotary actors does not require a change of the Council on Legislation. The dues are established by the RI board, the international dues. And so if this is of tremendous concern, you know, you have 2 directors from India and 1 coming in from Pakistan. You know, you can address those concerns with those directors, and they can, see what happened. That can be considered. But remember, at this point, the dues aren't even effective yet. It's not until a week from Friday that the dues become effective. And my suggestion is, let's see what happens before we just automatically make a change. And let's see what the impact is. This was not done in a way without thought and without consideration and hearing appeals from many different areas. We are a global organization. We have to establish, at least financially, rules that apply across the board. And let's see where things fall. But for any concern regarding that, that is something that the board can change. I would think they would be reluctant to change it, in the first year, but I suppose it's possible.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you. Yeah, we have past President Mohan from Bangalore. Yeah, Mohan, please, could you unmute and ask the question?
Yeah, greetings, Frank. Do we have a possibility of having observers to the COL virtually, considering the fact that in Houston we tried this, whoever could not be there? Because this gives exposure to most of the grassroots level Rotarians to probably get an insight in terms of how our constitution is evolving.
I think this is just my personal opinion. I don't have any control over this. I think that in the future, at some point, I'm not saying it will happen at the 2025 council, but I think eventually we will get to the point where we will be able to just live stream the event. Absolutely. In this situation, the RI staff was forced to come up with a technological solution to permit representatives to participate virtually, to hear the entire debate, to observe what is going on, to see the legislation, to see amendments, to see special announcements, and to vote from their living room or their bedroom. Trying to, on top of that, then have a live stream for the whole world, it was just like, okay, we've got our best, our hands are full, but hopefully in the future, we can do that. I think it's very important to do that. And we'll see what happens.
Sure. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mohan, for that question. And yeah, Dr. Samir, could you just unmute and ask your question?
Okay, now I was just reading up on the other questions that people are asking.
Yeah.
So I think PDG George, you can take a few more from the chat box, I guess.
Yeah, we'll be monitoring. In the meantime, if you could ask here.
PDG Rajkumar, he's got a question. PDG Rajkumar, go ahead.
Thank you, George, and good evening, good morning, everybody. Now with the focus increasingly on Rotractors, and with Jennifer Jones also considering them to be appointed as RI coordinators and RI positions, RI presidents, representative to RI conventions and various other significant positions. With the age limit removed on Rotractors, it is possible that Rotract clubs could be formed with adults who are really looking at getting the benefits of Rotary, paying only $8 as capitation fee, and not 34, 35 being paid by others. When we look at the long-term implication of this, do you see a position at a point of time when we'll find that people might consider starting a Rotract club and enjoy the benefits of Rotary full scale instead of starting a Rotary club? And this is going to hurt our finances badly. You remember we had a bad experience with the global grants and with restricted giving, when foundation was, people were paying money and getting more than what they gave from the foundation. And, it was only the loophole was plugged a year or two ago when Ravi was there, and things changed. And, the fortunes of the foundation also became better with APF going up. Mark?
So a Rotaractor cannot enjoy the benefits of Rotary full scale. So your statement, in my opinion, is incorrect, because they have no voting rights within the district. They have no ability to be district governor. They don't have any ability at this time to participate in the Council on Legislation. Now, granted, they have, to be, I think Jennifer has appointed one Rotaractor to be a coordinator. There are 40, she has 80 coordinators to appoint, 40 Rotary Public Image coordinators and 40 Rotary coordinators. She didn't appoint all 80 of them because they have 3-year terms. But you're saying right now you have one Rotaractor out of 80. I don't think you're going, I don't know what she'll do in terms of president's representatives, but, it might be half a dozen. You're going to have, I think it's unlikely that Rotaract clubs are going to be formed with adults, I'm sorry, Rotaractors are adults, with older persons.
No age limit.
Yeah, with, Rotaract clubs with more senior persons, just for the possibility of maybe might, get appointed to some other position. I think that's a highly unlikely prospect. And I think a club being formed just for that reason is unlikely. I could be wrong, but.
Yeah. Thank you, PDG Rajkumar. We have with us PDG Rajendra Rai also. Yeah, Rajendra Rai, could you unmute and ask the question?
I didn't raise my hand. I was only listening.
Okay, I saw you doing this way. I thought you were raising your hand. Okay, anyway, thanks.
Nice to be here. Nice to be listening to Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Sami, do you have any other questions?
CM, there is a question about attendance.
Correct. I was just looking in the chat box for that. Go ahead,
there's a question about attendance which is coming again and again in the chat box. The attendance rule right now says that out of the 48 meetings yearly, you have 24 meetings in one half, 24 meetings in another half. So if you attend 12 hours of meeting or service or any other Rotary activity in a half year, that is sufficient. You don't have to even attend a meeting. 12 hours of something that you do in Rotary. Is that right, or have you got any changes?
Well, first off, any club in the world can choose to, in their own bylaws, change the attendance requirements. Yes, that something like that. I don't even know what attendance requirements are anymore in the bylaw, standard club constitution. I don't, because any club in the world has the flexibility to just completely do away with them or adjust them in a different way. So if a club wants to be exactly, this is a club matter. Thank you, Bhaskaran and Pillai. Attendance is a club matter. Let them decide. Let each club decide. What do we care about? We may care about our own club, but what do we care about another club? Let the club sort it out and do it itself.
No, but the problem will be if the club decides the minimum requirement proposed by our Council on Legislation is something. And if you don't attend meetings more than what is required by the COL or more than what is required by our bylaws, the club can terminate a person saying that you haven't attended enough number of meetings. Even if you have 12 hours of attendance in service activities or your club meetings in each half, they can say, the club can say, you haven't attended enough number of meetings. We can terminate your membership from the club. Is it possible?
I don't know. I'd have to go look at, I haven't looked at those provisions in a long time. I don't know what they already say, I mean, you know, what they say, whatever provision is there, if you don't meet the provisions, the club can terminate. You know, if you're working and paying your dues and participating, I would hope that the club wouldn't stand on some formality, but.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I can understand it.
Yeah.
DGE-elect from Sri Lanka, Pogudu, would you like to ask a question? I saw your hand being raised. You were on the third floor. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, CM. Actually, my question was answered very well by Mark. Thank you, Mark. But I just wanted to kind of give you a good news from our part of, zones or other India and Sri Lanka. We have taken very much initiative to include our road tractors in our district committee. In my committee, actually more than 39% road tractors in my all district committees, including my assistant district secretary is a district in a road tract nominee, the year after the RRR, and almost all key committees, the membership, the service projects, the foundation, and also my conference, main road tractors are holding main position. So that way I believe we could improve ourselves, including this new and dynamic youth partners or other young partners. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, TG, for sharing this news with us. Now for Dr. George and Dr. Samir, we can take in only one question because we need to move towards the closure of it. Do you have any other question, Dr. George?
Samir, do you have any question?
No, I was looking out for the same. I think it's
it's all getting repeated.
It's more of the repetition of it. And thank you all participations and much more. Thank you, Mark, for clearing the doubts. This is what we believe in the RLISA symposiums. As Rotarians, we have certain of our own understanding, interpretations of the COL. But this is a forum which gives everybody an opportunity to share and learn. And that's learning is more important. And one-to-one from your side, giving the explanations and trying to make us understand, oh, this is the way to be interpreted is much more appreciated. Towards moving towards the last section of it, Mark, would you like to make any closing remarks on this topic?
Thank you very much, CM. It's a pleasure to be with all of you in India and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Pakistan and South Asian. And if I'm missing some countries, I apologize. But it's good to be with all of you today, this morning. I've been looking forward to this. And, I have many friends on this call. And I appreciate the courtesies that you've extended to me. And it was my pleasure to speak about the Council on Legislation and my interpretation of what the trends are based upon Council on Legislation Act. So have a good evening.
Thank you, Mark. And before we move, I asked past President Dr. Seema Singh to propose a vote of thanks for today's symposium. Dr. Seema Singh, please.
Thank you, CM. Mark, actually, the word used, encyclopedia, is true. It really thank you for making the complexity and the concepts you explained in such a easy manner that everyone was able to understand it very clearly. And about the one thing which Kamal shared with Lionheart, we have to wait and learn more about that later. But COL explained in such manner is enlightening for all of us who have attended. And thank you so much for explaining it in a very simple manner. And meeting you virtually has been a pleasure. And you took out such a time for this session. So once again, I think we all agree and appreciate the time which you took out for this session. This symposium, the 23rd symposium, has been very special because we talked about very important issue, and through you we have learned a lot. So thanks once again for being with us. And I would like to thank RLI South Asia Chair, Kamal sir, for introducing you in the beginning with to know your personality better. So we are more confident and more updated about the topic. And would like to thank PDG Samir because he made your introduction so lively and colorful through that video. And yeah, it was very interesting. And about the poem, I think for all of us, it has been a special moment because it had a great meaning. And I would not like to miss out Binoy because the poem had a great meaning. Simultaneously, the poem, the thoughts expressed by Binoy was also about our humanity, our causes, and the things we believe or our beliefs. So Mark, the way you started with the four-way test line and putting it up all together. So this becomes a special symposium for all of us. And the question answers managed by PDG George. I would like to mention special thanks to him because we are recently opening up an institute at Rotary in the name of Rotary Ashwarya. So many queries which were there in the mind became very clear about the monetary aspect also, about the role the DG Sri Lanka shared. Very exciting and very happening time can be there. That's the hope because COL, the DI, the four concepts which you touched are we are moving towards better future. So Marx, once again, thanks a lot for being with us and sparing the time. I can't miss out with our friend CM, who has managed this all. Your hard work and your commitment to make this possible is also commendable. And once again, to all the participants, all our friends, and Vinodji too, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Mark. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Dr. Seema. Just few, we had participants from Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, US, and from India, and we touched a big figure of 75 plus. Yes, friends, next month, we have another topic to discuss upon, and that is what RLISA symposiums would continue month after month. But before we close down, a big thank you to Mark for spending a lovely time with us and clearing most of our doubts. So friends, thank you, Mark, and we would look forward to you for the next Rotary calendar year, starting from 1st July on a different topic. So thank you, Mark, for being with us. And have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everybody. Goodbye.